Hi again, it's Elizabeth, the friendly neighborhood dietitian. We're gonna finish up this week with a grab and go meal. We're gonna do a lunch this time. We're gonna do a power bowl, a quinoa power bowl. And I think power bowls are really good for getting rid of everything in your refrigerator. They don't require a lot of prep. They're delicious and they meet all of our needs. So let's talk about how to make a power bowl, because you can make one however you want. You could make breakfast power bowls or lunch power bowls. Today's ours is going to be lunch because I had some leftover steak that I wanted to use up, and that's going to be the protein in my power bowl. So a power bowl consists of a starch, a protein, a fruit or a vegetable, right? So in our power bowl today, I'm going to do quinoa. I'm going to do I made one of those flank steak roll-ups with like the ham and the cheese in it. I mean, not the ham, the spinach and the cheese in it. I had one of those left over, so that's going to be my protein. And then I have some vegetables that I had to use up real quick, so I threw them in the oven to roast them. And I have some fresh tomatoes and some spinach to throw in there too. So I have my vegetable, I have my protein, and I have my starch. Since our starch today is quinoa, I thought we would have a conversation about quinoa, because I do get questions about it. Is it a protein? What's the big deal about quinoa? So I thought we might have that conversation before we make our power bowl. So the quinoa we're going to talk about today, I bought instant quinoa, right? So just because things are instant doesn't mean they're bad for you. This is still a great whole grain. Now you remember way back when we talked about whole grains and how they digest slower. That's ultimately what we are looking for, is slower digesting, and whole grains are higher in fiber, which means they digest slower. So that's why whole grains are good. Instant ones are okay. They're still a whole grain, which is better than a white, right? So when we look at this food label, okay, so the serving size is 1 cup, right? And 1 cup of quinoa. Now, it has 2 grams of fat, which I was trying to figure out where the fat came from, right? So as I was looking down here at the ingredients list, this does have sunflower oil added to it and some salt as well. Okay, so just know that quinoa doesn't have that in it naturally. They did add it in. Right, so we have 2 grams of fat, which is the equivalent to a half a teaspoon, if we're trying to break it down into something that we can relate it to. Oh, and the serving size is 1 of these cups. Dun, dun, dun. That's a serving size, okay? So 1 of these cups is 2 grams of fat, 34 grams of total carbohydrates, with 7 grams of fiber in it. So it does have a lot of fiber. Now, do you remember when we were talking about carbohydrates, grams is unrelatable, and when I think of total carbs, I think of I think of bread, right? So when we look at this, we could count this as this whole cup is like having 2 slices of bread, which is more than I want in a meal, but I get it if you're like, that's fine for me. I won't argue that, okay? So it's just a lot for me. So this is like having 2 slices of bread and an egg. So quinoa is higher in protein than other starches, but it still is considered a starch. It's a tad bit higher. Now, the thing that makes quinoa so neat is that quinoa is a complete protein, and it is one of the only vegetarian sources of complete protein out there, which is kind of neat, right? So that's another one of the things. So it is a little bit higher, but it is still considered a starch. So we're still going to put it in that starch section. Now, if you've never tried quinoa, I believe my opinion is that quinoa is a great replacement for rice. And if you can cook rice, you can cook quinoa. It's really easy. I think it tastes good. That's going to be our starch. Oh, and another thing too is I put this back on here, right, as we were reading the label. 4 grams of fat. I relate fat to, I turn grams of fat into teaspoons of butter just because it's something I can relate it to. So 4 grams of fat is 1 teaspoon of butter, so that's going to have a half a teaspoon of butter in it. 15 grams of carbs is like having a slice of bread. That's going to be our starch. And 7 grams of protein is like 1 egg or 1 ounce, and that's going to be our protein. So you can see how the quinoa kind of fits in the bigger picture. And then we have the extra steak roll-up and then the vegetables in our power bowl. And we could do this. I kind of think of my breakfast recipe as that oatmeal with the sausage and the fruit. That's kind of a power bowl too, because you got the starch, you got the protein, and you have the and you have the fruit. Now with quinoa too, I like to do quinoa in my colder salads because quinoa tastes okay cold. Sometimes rice can be a little crunchy cold, but quinoa doesn't have that. In fact, you don't even have to microwave this to heat it up. I just took the lid off of it, and I'm going to measure out a half of this. Actually, I'm not even going to measure it out. I'm only going to use a half of this because I want mine to be more like a slice of bread, because that seems like a better portion for me. All right, so I just put half of it in my bowl, okay? And then I'm going to, I already pre-cut up my leftover, this is my sausage, what is wrong with my deal? This is my steak and my spinach and cheese roll up that I already sliced up. I'm gonna put that over here. And then, so now, here we have, okay, we have this, we have the meat and the quinoa. And now I had some leftover roasted vegetables that I had to use up. So this is some roasted cabbage, onion, and carrots that I had to use up. And then I diced up some fresh tomatoes that I'm going to throw in there. And then I'm going to also add some, rip up some spinach to throw in there too. You would think I would have kale in there today, but I don't. Funny story. A friend got me this shirt and I wore it, and I wore it to the farmer's market, and I was looking at some kale, and this woman was staring at me and laughing, and I guess it was having kind of a sensitive day, and I asked her what was so funny, and she said, your shirt, because you are looking at kale while wearing that shirt. I felt like an ass, but that's okay. All right, and then I topped it with some fresh spinach. I'm gonna push this over here. Right? Now I'm gonna also top mine with this homemade Greek yogurt lime dressing. I'll put the recipe on there if you want it. It's Greek yogurt, honey, lime, salt, pepper, and water to dilute it a little bit. And I'm gonna top it with my salad dressing. All right, so now I have my power bowl. Low fat, not high carb, adequate protein, lots of fiber from fruits and vegetables. It should be pretty delicious. All right, so next week I gotta figure something out. So if you have any ideas, please let me know so we can cover what you're interested in. I know I am gonna do a granola recipe next week based on a patient request from before I even started doing this. Okay, so that one's for you. We'll see you soon. Bye.